So folks, we do have about 10 to 15 seats up front here and then over on the other side. So if you want to stand, you certainly can, but we do have a lot of seating still up front here.
Got a few folks still flowing in, so we'll give it just a minute or two yet.
Advancing slides or will?
On the clicker, so then you can click.
Okay, perfect.
Oh no, that's wrong. That's wrong.
If you want, scroll down, you can start down here, and then we can open it up, and then you can go back up to the top.
We should put it
Yeah.
up first. Just
We'll start right there.
Start there. Yep. Yes, absolutely. No, I'll be right here. Yeah, I'll be right over there.
I'm using control.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So then you'll just have to back me.
Yep, and then we'll just make sure it's loud enough.
Okay, we're gonna test. Can folks hear me? Okay. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you here. Thank you for coming. It's good to see all of you tonight to get the latest updates on the Kinney Corridor project. I'm Amy Peterson. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. Tonight we have two federal agencies with us, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the National Park Service. They both will be providing updates to their respective projects for about the next 30 minutes or so. We're not planning to take questions during this segment. Afterwards, you'll find staff, Army Corps, NPS, and city staff out here in the hallway and in the training room where you can take a look at some of the visuals that they have some conversations ask questions, and leave comments. I'll take just a few minutes to provide some background and context. From 2016 to 2018, the Kinney Corridor planning process took place, which culminated in the City Council deciding to go forward to remove both dams and restore the river. It wasn't too long after that, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the city came together around a potential program that could provide funding to the project. The Continuing Authorities Program, or CAP 206, has the possibility to provide 65% of the dam removal and restoration funding up to a maximum federal cap of $15 million. With a projected project cost over $20 million, there is still work to be done. The city signed on with the CAP 206 program in 2023, and currently the Corps is in the midst of the project feasibility study, which we'll learn more about in just a few minutes. As city staff was working with the Corps, it became clear that planning for the recreational amenities along the corridor needed to be happening simultaneously to the Corps project. And that was to ensure feasibility and seamless implementation. At that point, we were able to secure an award of technical assistance. So it's essentially time and staff expertise through the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. National Park Service staff have been working with city staff for over a year now, taking the Kinney Corridor planning elements and drilling down to the next level of planning and design. While today there are no funding sources for these planned amenities, we anticipate finding those sources during and after dam removal and restoration. Having these two agencies working together to fulfill the planning vision is extraordinary. The work hasn't been without delay or challenges, but so many people, including our federal staff partners, are committed to the goals of this project and the Kinney itself. So with that overview, I'll turn it over to Kevin Bogulke, Senior Project Manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and he will kick off the feasibility study project update.
All right, thank you, Amy. As Amy said, my name is Kevin Bogulke. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. A couple of logistics. This is a formal public information meeting as part of our feasibility review process with the Army Corps of Engineers. So if you didn't have a chance when you came in, please do sign in. There is a one-page comment or question card. Please fill that out. We'll take those and bring those back, and they'll be inserted as part of the public review record. And then also just a general placemat project overview that you can take with you tonight. So just a couple of those things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a little bit of the background information about the Kinney project, the program of which it's funded, and then I'll turn it over to Natalie McGlinch, our lead planner for the project, to provide general background information on what's incorporated into the feasibility study. Amy went through some of the stuff. As she mentioned, afterwards, we'll have the Park Service in the hallway. Corps of Engineers portion of the project is in the training room. So the study authority, I'll go over that. We'll touch on what the overview and the existing conditions. We'll talk about the alternative development process to get us to the point of the tentatively selected plan or the design element that we're going to be moving through with the feasibility study. We'll talk about the benefits of that tentatively selected plan and then the next steps. And then I touched on how to comment. So this project is underneath the Water Resources Development Act. And within that, there's several sections. This particular project is funded under the Continuing Authorities Program, specifically Section 206, which is targeted towards aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. It must improve the quality of the environment as a component of that project. They must need to be determined to be in the public interest, be cost effective. There can be a small portion of recreation that is integrated into the project if it's justified. Can account for up to potentially 10% of a total project cost. At the time, right now, we are actually beneficial. We benefited from Congress's action to increase in the Water Resources Development Act 2024, they increased the federal project share from $10 million up to $15 million. Because we are not done with the feasibility report yet, and in a project partnership agreement to move towards the planning, engineering, and design phase, this project does qualify for that increased dollar amount from 10 to 15 million. The feasibility study, the portion that we're talking about today, is a 50-50 cost share between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the city of River Falls as our non-federal sponsor. And then as we move into the design and the construction implementation phase, that is up to a 65% federal, 35% sponsor share. And then the sponsor is responsible for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the project. I'll touch on maybe going back. So at the time that we started this project, we were working underneath a $10 million federal project limit because of the over $20 million cost of the project. Part of the delays, we needed to go through a waiver process that goes to for approval with the Assistant Secretary of Army of Civil Works in Washington, D.C. That was approved. So even though the federal share was increased from 10 to 15, we're still, that waiver is still applicable. What that says is that we're able to build a project more than that federal share, but the city or the non-federal sponsor would be responsible for any cost above the $15 million threshold. So the KINNICKINNIC River project, known as the Kinney River, a little bit of background. I'm sure you are all much more familiar with it than I, not being a resident of River Falls. 22 miles in length. It is a spring-fed cold water stream. There are feeder creeks, the South Fork, Parker Creek, that feed the main stem of the Kinney. It has a confluence with the St. Croix River. It is a class 1 trout stream. So part of the elements where we're able to justify the benefit underneath the CAP 206 program is that direct benefit to the trout population. And that's one of the main premises for moving forward with the project. The main study area is right downtown River Falls. Not doing anything really above the Lake George area and nothing below the Powell Falls Dam. And as I mentioned, there's 2 existing dams that we're looking at removing in order to achieve that trout stream and environmental restoration aspect, along with some floodplain restoration work that Natalie will touch on in a minute. Trevor's going to take over. Trevor Cyphers.
Hey everyone, my name is Trevor Cyphers. I am the lead biologist on the project. So I'm just going to touch some of the existing condition right now and look at some of the different sub areas just to get you familiar with it. So first we're going to start upstream. We got Junction Falls Dam, which impounds the Lake George Reservoir. The dam itself generates 1,220 megawatt hours of hydropower annually, and it's still licensed under FERC. And then that creates Lake George. The reservoir itself is rather shallow in depth, and it being on a trout stream is not the greatest thing in the sense that that shallow water can create or increase water temperatures in the summer especially, which then results in low dissolved oxygen, which is not good, both for trout, that increased temperature as well as the low dissolved oxygen. The lake itself has relatively limited emergent aquatic vegetation. And like I mentioned earlier, those 2 combination of low dissolved oxygen and increased water temperature can be fatal and not allow trout to stay in that area, and also cause problems downstream for water quality. Moving downstream, you have Powell Falls Dam as well as Lake Louise Basin. Powell Falls Dam was damaged during a summer flood in 2020, and then the lake was drained to assess the damage, and the city determined that the dam needed to be fixed in order to be used again. So now the gate remains open, and the city surrendered the FERC license in 2022, which leaves us with Lake Louise being a drained basin, which happened in October 2020. And just talking about the stream now through the subbasin down there, it has limited high quality trout habitat There's a lot of unwanted vegetation, stinging nettles, that sort of things. There's not hardly any trees along the bank, being that it's like a new riparian area. So there's a lack of shade, which is not great for your trout stream. And the stream banks themselves lack stability. And then the final sub-basin I'm going to touch on is spring ponds. So these are spring-fed ponds that are just west of Junction Falls and north of Lake Louise. The water within them is mostly stagnant. They can experience algal blooms in the summer months especially, and that's mostly due to the outlet structures being partially blocked by debris, and there's limited flow going out of them. And the outlets themselves then connect back to the Kinney, and they're mostly unshaded as well. So after the project team, looked at the different existing conditions, we then came up with a number of study objectives, right? The primary objectives of the project, as well as number of opportunities. The first two objectives were to restore natural hydrothermal and hydrogeomorphic dynamics to support cold water species. And then the second objective was to increase river pool geomorphic sequencing to increase the use and availability of cold water habitat species. So basically, restore the stream and provide habitat, right? And then on top of that, there are three main opportunities we saw. First, increase riparian forest habitat, provide shade to the stream, increase emergent wetland habitat, and finally improve public use recreation. So in order to do that, we came up with a number of restoration measures. So on the left here, we have the main primary ones I already touched on, right? So we have stream restoration being the primary objective, and then forest restoration and marsh restoration being those opportunities. Really the stream restoration depends on dam removal, which is down there on the bottom, probably should be on the top. But so the main one, we want to like restore the waterfalls behind those dams. And then a lot of the other things are, changing the stream and doing hydrogeomorphic stability stuff. So providing habitat, making sure the stream stays where it is, and providing trout habitat. As for like forestry restoration, it's really just planting native trees and then native seeding of vegetative plants. And then finally for the marsh restoration, it would be digging down or excavating to the water table, and then also bringing in emergent vegetation in those areas too. So those are the restoration measures we wanted to look at. And from there, we came up with a number of alternatives for the project. And then Natalie is going to talk about alternative development of the project. Thanks.
Kevin's so tall. Hi all, I'm Natalie McGlinch. I was the lead plan formulator for the project. And so I'll pick up where Trevor left off in terms of the alternative development. So we started out this whole process. We had a lot of information from the city. Amy touched on the fact that there was a lot of data that was gathered prior to the Corps even coming into this process. And so the aim was to use as much of that data as possible, along with comments from the public and any other previous studies. So from that review of a lot of information, we were able to determine that there are three main sub areas within the study area. The main, and Trevor talked about this, the main being Lake George, Lake Louise, and the Spring Ponds areas. From there, we kind of mix and match to combine to make the sub areas into various alternatives, so that each alternative that we developed was distinctly different from one another, which then resulted with 7 alternatives, including the no action plan. So really 6 alternatives that would change something along the Kinney corridor. So we'll give you a better visual. I know that a table is not the most ideal way of seeing this, but these are kind of listed out, the 7 different alternatives, the first being the no action plan, Alt 2 including the Junction Falls dam removal and restoration actions up in the Lake George area. Alternative 3 was focused on the Powell Falls dam removal and Lake Louise restoration. And Alt 4 was the combination of the dual dam removals and restoration actions occurring in both Lake George and Lake Louise. And then Alts 5, 6, and 7, those are basically the same as alt 2, 3, and 4, except we add in the restoration of those spring ponds. So alt 5 is Junction and spring ponds, alt 6 is Powell and spring ponds, and 7 is everything. So from this, we had gone through a lot of different processes, analysis on like the core side, apart from the work that the city had done to determine the different types of benefits that we would see from the various restorations and dam removal, which brought forward the two main alternatives. And if you have more questions about the plan formulation process and how we narrowed it down, I'm happy to answer questions. But so after weighing the amount of ecological benefits for the various alternatives, alt 5 and alt 7 were identified as the most kind of bang for your buck in terms of the most ecological benefits for the lowest cost. So alternative 5, if you think back to the table, that is the focus on the Lake George area. This includes that removal of the dam, and then it includes bottomland forest, marsh, and mesic forest restoration all throughout that Lake George area. And then it also includes that spring pond restoration. And then alt 7, again, is kind of that big kahuna where it's got both of the dam removals and restoration actions happening all throughout the Kinney. It connects the whole riparian corridor, and then again includes that spring ponds. So the kind of culmination of all of the work that went into this was going into a selection of a tentatively selected plan. This is the plan that we saw that was determined to have the biggest impact for the least cost and the most ecological benefits throughout, including like the lower Kinney. And so this is, again, this is alt 7, so it's that dual dam removal. It includes the restoration in both of the lake areas and the spring ponds. And then the total project cost is just over 24 million. And just a note on that, I know Amy and Kevin had both brought it up, but it is cost shared with the federal government. And there's a 40% contingency with this cost currently. It's being refined as we get more into the strict design elements, but so this will be updated as the project moves forward. So to kind of, in a way, like kind of wrap up all the benefits that we see from moving forward with this tentatively selected plan, it fully meets all those project objectives that Trevor had mentioned before, where it's connecting that whole riparian corridor. We see that there's 13 acres or about 1.2 river miles of cold water stream restoration. It improves the water quality parameters for those trout species, and it provides excellent spawning habitat for those trout species as also. We want to keep it a class 1 trout stream. So going into the opportunities, it provides roughly about 30 acres of riparian forest habitat. As I said before, it connects that riparian corridor. So not only are we seeing a bunch of really good benefits for like both the trout and other species in the area, it also extends downstream, which you don't get if you just solely remove, say, one dam. So it also provides around 3 acres of emergent wetland habitat, and it increases the potential recreation for the local community, which I'm sure we will hear more about. So other benefits is there's an expansion of natural native wildlife. We like to add in as much wildlife, native species as possible when we're implementing projects, and removal of invasive species. So like Trevor had mentioned, the stinging nettles, and it improves the local aesthetics. So in terms of next steps, the public is welcome to read the report and provide comments on the report. As Kevin had mentioned, there's that QR code or the physical comment card that you can provide comments on. Those are very helpful, and they go into the public record just to show the kind of public knowledge or like the public sentiment behind the project. They aren't necessarily used for voting, but they are part of showing how the public views the project. And then if you are physically writing in the comments, there's an address at the top. It's also on those actual comment cards if you're submitting those, or you can also send them to the email that we have listed both on the placemats, comment cards, and I think we have a few QR codes just floating around. So, all right, that is wraps up the core side of the presentations, but I will hand it over to Barrett Steinrod from the National Park Service.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Barrett Steinrod. No worries, people get the mistake all the time. I'm a community planner with the National Park Service in the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. And obviously, Amy already provided a little bit of introduction. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the Park Service's role in your local community over the next 15 minutes or so. But before I begin, I just want to do a quick poll by raise of hands. How many of you have been to a national park in the last year? Okay, wow, great representation of this community. And how many of you would like to be in a national park right now? Okay, all right, I figured. Well, excellent. That always seems to be the case. You guys are in line with the rest of the Midwest region when I ask that question. So one of the things I want to talk about tonight is the role of the National Park Service and why we're in your community. And I have some specific comments that I want to make sure I get right. So I will be referring to some notes here as I begin. But you're wondering, why is the Park Service here? We're not anywhere really near a national park. I mean, the St. Croix River is a national park, but why is the Park Service here? So the National Park Service, as you know, manages places like Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, but it also has programs. And those programs are there to provide support to local communities on their parks and trails initiatives. And there's a reason for that. And let me read to you the National Park Mission Statement that kind of like provides that authority. So the National Park Service preserves unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the National Park Service system for its enjoyment, for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. The National Park Service cooperates with partners to extend the benefits of natural and cultural resource conservation and outdoor recreation throughout this country and the world. And so that second half of the mission statement allows our program to come partner with you on your local parks and projects. And that's because Congress and the Park Service view these local initiatives as important as the big parks that you would all like to be at right now. So the program I work in is a no-cost assistance program. We work at the invitation of local communities on their conservation and outdoor recreation initiatives. We work across all 50 states and the US territories. The program is a fairly small program. It's been around for a long time. The origins of this program go back to the Kennedy administration, amazingly. I'm representing one part of an overall team that's been working in your community for the last year. So besides myself, we've got Patrick Lydon who's a landscape architect based in Michigan. We have Alyssa Wethy, who's a specialist in the hydropower assistance program, also in Michigan. They've both been on site here, kind of kicked the tires of the site, but they can't be here tonight. I am joined by my colleague, Holly Larson, over there in the corner. She'll be available to answer questions about the visuals that we've got. She's an outdoor recreation planner. And so our team is here to, at the invitation of the City of River Falls, to help move your outdoor recreation planning forward in the way that is world-class locally. So how did this collaboration begin? It really started with a phone call or an inquiry in which the City of River Falls reached out to our program and said, hey, we've got this project. We think this would be a good fit. Amy kind of touched on that. And in conversation with the City of River Falls, we realized this is a standout collaboration in which the Park Service would really like to be a part of it. And so that led to the City of River Falls submitting an application. You can see a couple pages from that application up on the screen. They garnered letters of support from local entities that have a stake in this project, and they made an application to our program. It was a very busy year last year when we received applications, and so we had a lot of hard decisions to make about staffing allocation, but this was a project in which we were able to allocate 3 staffing members full-time on the project. Most projects don't get that level of assistance. So you should be very kind of like proud of what you have locally and how the Park Service views your local amenity. I truly mean it when I say world-class locally. It really seems to be that way. And so from that point of the Park Service accepting the project and moving forward, we started working with the City of River Falls. And the really first part of that was, what are the other documents that you have that we should know about that are going to help us do our best thinking on this project? And so the Park Service team did a deep dive into the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan. We received updated planning documents that have been created by the city since the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan was documented. We, of course, got some of the available documents from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to inform our thinking. And then we started a 2-day in-person visit where the whole planning team came together, toured the site, really understand what the goals were for the next year, and started working out a work process for this coming year. It's been about 13 months now. Shortly after that initial kickoff session, we did have an engagement session with some students from the University of Wisconsin River Falls. They were involved in kind of an annual effort to catalog science and data on the corridor and the riparian environment. And we felt it would be really valuable to get that student perspective, especially since they had been battling for several weeks the thistle and stinging nettle that were referred to earlier. Data analysis, assembly of data, mapping of data has been a big component of what we've contributed throughout this whole process. I will just kind of, I guess, point out this map on the right side of your screen. That is a air photo base with the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan visual base laid on top, with the CAP 206 plan laid on top, with parcel boundaries and road boundaries and sewer infrastructure and sidewalks and a lot of other layers there. And so like we use data to really inform our thinking and our exploration as we kind of poked and prodded around the site as we've done this design process. We've had regular meetings monthly with the City of River Falls over the last 13 months. This has truly been a collaborative process in which we've been working as someone who's at the table equally with an equal interest, but it's not our project, it's your project. And there's been additional site visits as we've needed to do them to kind of understand gaps in our understanding or to field check assumptions that we were making as part of the planning process. And so part of that included a kayak investigation of the river. You'll see Emily Shively there on a canoe or in a kayak on the far left. That wasn't just for fun, that was really to investigate the river, because there's a lot about this corridor you cannot see from the shoreline. You need to get onto the river to kind of assess it. Some of those being opportunity areas, stormwater outfalls, and such. So pages 74 and 76 of your KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan have these two tables displayed on screen. And these tables really constitute the bulk of the outdoor recreation desires within the vision for the KINNICKINNIC Corridor area and the study area. These are really the basis for the outdoor recreation thinking that the Park Service has tried to do in the last year. So we're not trying to create anything new for you. We're trying to go deeper down the funnel of design based on what you've already done, based on the good work that you've already done. And so the work of the last year has really been focused on helping the community, helping the City of River Falls figure out the where and the what of kind of all of these ideas, all of these elements. And I'll use the words projects, elements, recreation amenities kind of interchangeably. And a big part of what we've tried to figure out is, there's been change within the KINNICKINNIC Corridor. The Army Corps has kind of illuminated what those changes are and will likely be going forward. And so we've really tried to understand what those changes are and how that impacts some of the recreation planning that's in the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan. So to be clear, the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan is an amazing plan, but it is a high-level concept document. And since its publication, there have been changes to this landscape that necessitate modification of some elements within that plan. So the Park Service and the City of River Falls have really been working to understand what those changes are and to explore design and implementation of outdoor recreation alternatives based on those changes. And this is to be expected in a high-level concept plan that's moving towards implementation over a period of years. So some of you may be wondering about what some of those changes are, possibly a change of location of the city compost yard. Since the KINNICKINNIC Corridor Plan was developed, right, the Lake George Trail has been developed. That's not going away, but how does new recreation infrastructure hook into that? Thinking about bringing mountain biking trails closer to the city core versus being on the boundaries of the city, and a few others. So from this process here, the Park Service team, once we got this thorough understanding of kind of like the history and the site and kind of everything that it's presenting, especially in terms of the opportunities, we went through kind of what we call an icon placing process, in which we subdivided the entire planning area into kind of planning zones. And within those planning zones, we worked to identify the placement of recreation amenities based on kind of like everything I've shared with you so far. And those recreation amenities really kind of fall into two categories: place-based recreation amenities and path or corridor-based recreation amenities. So some of the placement of those recreation amenities have to do with river access locations based on like what the conditions are now and how conditions will change in the future. Some are based on existing infrastructure, such as sidewalks or stormwater outfalls, and some are based on interesting quirks of the landscape topography that are either there now or expected to change based on what the Army Corps is, what they're working on. And so on this slide, you can see that there are several images that show kind of placement of this iconography over a large area. Of course, you have the large image on the map. That would be like 22 by 34 if we blew it up, and then some call outs based on that. And you can see that, for a given recreation amenity, kayak launches, they're place-based, picnic areas, things that are kind of contained within a specific geography. We've done our best to kind of like locate those in the landscape based on what the landscape's telling us. And for amenities that are more path-based, in which you're moving through it, such as a corridor or a trail experience, icon placement's kind of distributed across an area, right? So if you see an icon that's indicating like, oh, a trail here, it's not just there, it's kind of across the wider area. Now, the icon placement isn't really for you to try and memorize or take note of. It was really a mechanism to help the Park Service team cooperate with the city team and make sure that we're all in alignment on our thinking and communication. You'll notice that some of those icons are color coded. I'm going to talk about what that means in a minute, but those colors indicate a level of kind of intervention within the landscape. So what are these interventions? So the icon colors that you saw on that previous map that were green were essentially indicating landscape architecture treatments or outdoor recreation amenities that were going to involve a light touch. So you can think of things that are, this is more of a nature-based area with minimal human intervention, but like subtle moves. So these things might be temporary, artistic, movable elements made of found materials or natural materials, or if they're more curated, materials that like have a home in such of a site. And so the examples that you see on screen constitute precedent, right? These constitute examples from around the world, actually, Central North America, Europe, and Asia, where we looked at what are other places doing around where there's waterfront in terms of recreation planning, captured a whole book of ideas, and then said, hey, what of these seem to be most culturally appropriate for your community? Got that feedback from the city. Some of those ideas are represented on there, although that's really a fraction of what we found. And so this kind of gives you an idea of like some of the things that could have a home in your community if you felt they were appropriate in terms of the light touch. A moderate touch goes a little bit further. In this touch, this is integrating man-made features into the landscape in a way that's more clearly visible. Things aren't dominant, but edges are clearly defined. Topography is more clearly legible. Construction detailing is more precise. This is kind of typically what you might find in a high-end park that's not overly designed. And again, you're seeing examples of these kinds of ideas captured from around the world. And then lastly, that kind of intensive treatment. So these would involve outdoor recreation amenities and interventions that are highly architectural, strong form, high design, still utilizing material palette that is stone, wood, the same kinds of elements that you'd see in the other sites for consistency across the whole area, but maybe including subtle metals, some hardened surfaces, and well-behaved plant varieties, right? So in terms of the recreation amenities across the site, I'll just back up briefly. Those icon placements were like thinking about kind of like the level of intensity across the whole watershed and trying to do it in a really thoughtful, responsible way. So based on everything that I've shared with you, And sorry, my voice is getting a little bit tired. I tend to speak too loud sometimes. I want to talk about how all of that feeds into kind of the sneak peeks you're seeing on the slide here and what you've already kind of gotten a glance at out in the hallway. So following this kind of like mapping and placement of amenities based on like whether it's a place-based or path-based and the level of the intervention, the Park Service really started working with the City of River Falls on understanding whether the placement of these features was appropriate. So we started doing detailed concept design planning. We wanted to understand like, oh, we proposed an amphitheater in this location, or we proposed river access in this location, or, a place-based amenity, does this truly fit based on kind of like doing more detailed design, like at scale? And based on that, we were able to then get feedback, kind of work through those revisions and like go a bit further in the concept design process. If something was an amenity that was more of a path-based, like, oh, we proposed there being a lot of trails in here. Is there really enough mileage to kind of justify that? Would it be too tight and crowded? Does this really make sense? And so that detailed concept design work was really designed to then kind of like check assumptions and make sure those assumptions are valid and then continue to further refine. And then based on those detailed concept designs, we've put together a series of scene renders to kind of cast a vision for you of some of these locations within the watershed, 10 to 15 years after the Army Corps would have completed its restoration work. So you're seeing kind of a glimpse of what those rendered boards are. You're going to see them out in the hallway shortly. But to be clear, the Park Service is not prescribing anything for your community. We're trying to cast vision as best we can, as responsibly as we can, in a way that is frankly demanding of the world-class level that you have in this community, and give you a sense of what's possible. So when you look at these scene renders, when you consider the ideas that are proposed, there's a whole lot of analysis and process that went behind that. I've explained some of that for you. Really want to get you excited about, that fundraising and championing these things that you're going to want to have down the road. And if any of this needs to change, certainly, it can change. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over back to Amy, who's going to kind of wrap us up here. I do want to give one shout out to another member of our team who I didn't mention initially. That was a graduate student at Kansas State University, Catalina Huevas. She did a lot of these renders that you'll be seeing tonight. If it wasn't for her efforts, on top of juggling her master's thesis as well, we would have less to look at. So a big kudos to her. And with that, my comments are done. Amy, thanks, and I'll see you out on the floor.
Very good. Thank you. I want to thank all of the federal partners and for this presentation too. It was an overview. Hopefully, if you have more questions, you can head out and talk to them. I do want to give a shout out to some of the Fisk City staff that have worked on this, and I'm not sure they're probably hiding out in the hallway, but we've got Emily Shively, our Assistant Community Development Director, Todd Niklesky, our City Engineer, and newly on board in the past 3 months is Brooks Ostendorf, our Conservation and Parks Manager. So you'll be meeting with those folks out in the hallway too. So from here, I'll let you adjourn. Park Service is in the hallway just out here. Army Corps is going to be in the training room just on further, and you can flow through, talk with federal staff, city staff. We're there to answer your questions and anything that you might need. So thank you so much for coming and being here tonight. Thank you.